Hello students. Yes, in my last two videos I had explained on the different factors that which affects the financial plan, where a financial planner has to keep all these factors in his mind while preparing a financial plan. We have few more factors which is left out, so I will cover those factors and wind this particular topic in this video. All right. So liquidity requirements. What does liquidity requirements talk about? See, a company, it needs to make the payments in order to meet its obligations. And what is the obligations? If the company has borrowed, an amount from outside, it has to pay, right? If it has made any kind of credit purchases, it will have to make the payment on the future date. It has to meet its financial obligations, right, on the due dates, right? So this affects the credit worthiness and the solvency of the company, of course, right? No, see, the terms of the credit which is offered by the suppliers, and the need should be matched with the terms of the credit offered to the customers of a company. That's very very important. So basically it determines the liquidity requirements and the financial planning by a company. I've told you, liquidity requirements is very very important when a business, with the intention like having a long term view. It's very important when it is having, like when it is able to run its operations on a daily basis smoothly. How smoothly it can run? When it will have, adequate, that is sufficient amount of funds as a working capital in order to run its day-to-day operations. What does it do? It of course ensures the factor of liquidity is where it talks about how easily the assets can be converted into cash, how readily you can have the money in your hands, right? That's very important. So again, at the time of making the financial planning, this a factor affects a lot in terms of the short term goals. That's what the short term financial planning also talks about, right? So the next factor what you have is claim on assets. Now what does claim on assets talk about? See, before supplying credit to a company, the creditors link no the creditors, you have the bank and other financial institutions, they may expect the creation of charge on the movable and the immovable assets of a company. What does it create? This creates a claim by the creditors on the assets of a company, and this also limits the amount of finance that can be raised, and this again affects the financial planning. So this is one of the important, very important factors, which should be considered at the time of financial planning. What does this, creditors like bank and other financial institutions are going to do? They will expect, a creation on the charge of movable and immovable assets. Movable, I'm talking about the current assets. Immovable is something like it, the land and building it can, right? All these are immovable assets. So what is going to happen? It will, of course, the creditors will have the expectation on creating a charge on of all those things. So that it creates a claim by the creditors on the assets of a company, right? And again, what will be the impact? It limits the amount of finance that can be usually raised. Again, the claim on assets, that which is going to happen from creditors end, is going to have a huge impact on the financial planning. So the next step what you have is type of products and services offered by the company. What does it do? See, some products and services, it requires more finance, the fixed capital, the working capital. Whereas some, it may require a less finance. Again, it depends upon the products and the services that which the company is offering, right? So the amount of fixed capital on the work and the working capital will always vary, because the date fixed is something where you're not going to again and again do it. It is like over a period of time. It can mean 1 year, or once in 2 years you can go out with fixed capital. But when it comes to working capital, every day, because every day you are running your business, right? All your operations are happening on a daily basis. So of course there will be a vary between fixed capital and working capital, and again this particular factor, it majorly affects the financial planning by the company. Clear? So the next factor what you have is diversity of product lines. Now what does diversity of product lines talk about? See, diversity in product lines, it may create a need for more working capital. See, now you're into already a company, you're into ABC company where you're running, yours is a manufacturing company. You're already working here, you have poured in your money, you have made up your capital structure. Every day, you're taking care of your working capital management, everything. If you want to get into, like diversify into your product line, what is going to happen? Example I'll give you. Say for example, Mr. A, he is into, manufacturing of two wheelers, right? Two wheelers, he's into manufacturing of two wheelers. He's doing absolutely great financially. He's been well being in Bangalore, right? He's doing absolutely great. Now what he thinks of diversifying his business, that he chooses another product line, that is manufacturing of four wheelers. So when he is diversifying, what is going to happen? The other side of business, other stream of business, it requires now more working capital, isn't it? So some of the fixed facilities of the company, it can be shared by the diverse, product lines as well. So this again varies the amount of capital required. Now you just don't think of you just don't like think of just the two wheeler, right? You think of the four wheeler manufacturing as well. So it varies with the amount of capital which is required by a company. So again, this particular factor also plays, an important role, at the time of making a decision. The next step what you have is the method of production. Now what does method of production talk about? See, a company has to decide whether, to automate its operations, and the extent of automation and is there in its operations, and whether the automation can be made partial or as a whole in total, or the extent of automation, like again it determines the capital. What kind of capital? Fixed plus working capital. What are the requirements of the company, right? So the present stage of automation and the what is the need for it in the future also affects the financial planning of a concern. Always this matters a lot, how the method of production is going to happen. In simple words, whether it is done by, which is of capital intensive or labor intensive, right? You are going to make, a particular decision about the method of production, how you are going to carry it out in your organization. The next step what you have is a plans for growth and diversification. See, every company, of course, it needs to have a plan with respect to the growth. If you don't have growth, then there is no meaning there, it is not relevant at all, right? So it may also look out for the opportunities. Once you're doing absolutely great in terms of your financially sound, you think of expanding your business, you think of diversifying your business. And again, for which, what do you require? You require fixed capital, you require working capital. You will have to determine both the capital, and both the requirements are really very very crucial, which in turn what is going to do? It is going to affect the financial planning of the organization. Hence, the plan for growth and diversification will play a vital role in terms of, affecting a financial plan. Well, moving to the last point under factors, it is government policies and control. What does policies talk about? Policies is something, it talks about certain set of guidelines that which is framed by the government, where the companies, they should be adhere to such guidelines there, and they have to follow, that is they have to implement and follow the same in the organization. See, a firm has to consider the policies of the government, like it can be in terms of monetary, it can be in terms of, the fiscal policies, while preparing the financial planning. It's like must. The government policies, it offers the incentives and what do I say, yeah, the penalties for certain lines of business, and for certain activities, right? The firm needs to consider the effect of all these on its finance before indulging in the financial planning. Always this is something like, before coming up with a plan, before making a blueprint upon the plan, with respect to finance, always a financial planner has to lay in all these policies which is given by the or framed by the government. Upon that he has to make a control. So it is always must that a firm needs to consider the effect of all these aspects, the policies, the set of guidelines which is given by the government. On that the finance should be made, that is on its finance should be made, like before indulging into the financial planning. All right, so all these factors affects a financial plan. Again, one of the important questions, this is you can expect in your exams. All right.